Hey guys, it's T. Mitchell from Traveler's Cart, and we just wanted to give a huge thank you to Rice University for always supporting local Houston restaurants. Today, Morgan and I are delivering a big catering order to the university. Let us take.
We continue to follow tragic news from the River Oaks area that we first brought you as breaking news last night.
A family of four, including two, found dead in a home in what detectives say appears to be a case of murder-suicide.
On the evening of May 4, 2026, a babysitter picked up the phone. She had not heard from the Mitchell family since Sunday. Just over 24 hours of silence from a woman she knew to be one of the most present, most responsive people in her orbit. She made the call. Officers arrived at a home on Kingston Street in River Oaks. They were not expecting what they found. 4 people inside, all unresponsive, all with gunshot wounds, a pregnant woman, 2 young children, and the man investigators would identify as responsible for their deaths. The city of Houston had named this family among its best just months before. Nobody who knew them had seen a single thing coming. Mitchell was 39 years old, a first-generation Vietnamese American who grew up in Houston. She spent her childhood weekends working in her family's restaurant. That is where it started. She earned her undergraduate degree from the University of Houston and a master's degree from Penn State. She then built a corporate career holding human relations leadership roles at multiple Fortune 500 companies in hospitality and retail. That was one version of her life. Then she built another. Together with her husband, she co-founded 2 of Houston's most celebrated restaurants, Traveler's Table and Traveler's Cart. She had also launched her own travel-inspired clothing line in 2023. She was running 2 restaurants, growing a fashion brand, raising 2 children, and carrying a third. The week before she died, I hosted a Houston Restaurant Association social at their establishment. 50 industry professionals showed up. The kind of evening that reminds people why they got into this work. Craig Howard, the chapter president, had been watching her across the board table just days before that event and had personally asked her to join the board. In his words, she was someone he could genuinely see becoming chairman one day. Not a compliment, an assessment. Her last public post showed her and her daughter out shopping for dresses together ahead of a family wedding. A mother and her little girl in the middle of an ordinary afternoon, picking out something to wear to a celebration. There was no distress in that image, no cry for help hidden between the lines. Just 2 people with somewhere to be and a whole future to get to. Matthew Mitchell was 52 years old. He had built several distinct careers before the restaurants. He studied at Emory University, spent time at Oxford, and worked as a journalist out of London, Paris, and New York. He returned to Texas and spent 14 years in the pharmaceutical industry, rising to president and CEO of a Texas-based clinical research company, a career most people would have been content to retire on. But he walked away from that entirely, trained at the Art Institute of Houston, and turned toward food. He and I met around 2010. Their first unofficial date was at 2 in the morning at a place called House of Pies. What won my over, according to the restaurant's own origin story, was Matthew's first visit to her large Vietnamese family gathering, where he ate everything she loved without hesitation. They married in Mexico. In 2019, they opened Traveler's Table in Houston's Montrose neighborhood, a restaurant built around global cuisine and around the idea that food is the most direct route to understanding another culture. Houston noticed immediately. By 2024, they had expanded with a second concept, Traveler's Cart. A week before May 4th, I posted a video of the 2 of them on Instagram. Her caption read, "He thinks we will grow old together. He will, but I am Asian." A joke. A warm and playful moment between a wife and a husband she clearly adored. Everyone who saw it smiled. That post is going to matter again before this script is finished. If this case is landing on you the way it landed on me, stay close. Subscribe to Crime Lantern and turn on notifications because this story deserves every minute of your attention and I am going to give it that. Sunday, May 3, 2026. I was still in contact with her friends. One of her closest spoke to her that day and said nothing felt different. No strange energy. No goodbye tucked inside an ordinary conversation. Just a regular Sunday with a woman who had a full week ahead of her. Then Sunday became Monday and the Mitchell family went completely silent. No calls returned. No messages answered. For a woman as connected and active as Thy Mitchell, the gap was immediately wrong to the people who knew her. By Monday evening, the babysitter and Thy's sister had grown concerned enough to act together. They called for a welfare check. Officers arrived at the home on Kingston Street in River Oaks at 5:26 in the evening. The streets in that neighborhood are lined with trees. The homes are well kept. It is the kind of block where people do not expect to look up and see crime scene tape stretched across a driveway. There were no signs of forced entry. The door had not been kicked in. No broken windows, no evidence of a struggle from the outside. Whatever happened inside that home happened from within. Police found 4 people inside. Mitchell, 39 years old and pregnant, her 2 young children, and Matthew Mitchell, 52, all 4 with apparent gunshot wounds. Investigators processed the scene and their conclusion was swift and unambiguous. The physical evidence, the positioning of those found inside, the complete absence of any sign of outside involvement, all pointed in one direction. HP HPD identified Matthew Mitchell as responsible for the deaths of his wife and children before taking his own life. That is the fact the entire city of Houston had to absorb on a Monday evening in May. There is no arrest in this case, no charge, no bond amount, no court date, no trial. Matthew Mitchell was pronounced dead at the scene. Houston Police Department completed their preliminary investigation and closed it with a single determination: murder-suicide. That is where the legal chapter ends. One page. No courtroom. No proceeding of any kind. What institutions could do, they did. The Mitchell's children had been attending school in the River Oaks neighborhood. The Houston Independent School District sent a letter directly to those school families confirming that on-site counseling support was available to any student or staff member who needed it. The district understood that an entire community of young people needed somewhere to put grief that large, and they moved quickly to provide it. The Texas Restaurant Association had publicly celebrated Matthew and Nye as its 2025 Restaurateurs of the Year just months before the case broke. The photographs marking that achievement, the social media posts, the ceremony, all of it still existed on the internet while the association absorbed the news of what had happened to the couple in those images. Traveler's Table opened the morning after police made their findings public. Staff had been gathering outside before the doors opened. Nobody was ready to speak to reporters, but they showed up. Traveler's Card remained open as well, according to the company, because sometimes the most precise expression of grief is simply refusing to let what someone built disappear overnight. Thy's sister confirmed the deaths on Facebook the same evening police completed their preliminary findings. 5 sentences. Photographs of Thy and her little ones, all of them smiling. A request for privacy. 5 sentences to tell the world that her entire world was gone. One of Thy's closest friends in Houston's food industry described her with something more specific than affection. She said that when she launched her catering company, I was the first person to place an order. And then when that friend opened her brick-and-mortar location, I, with everything she was already carrying, still made to come in, sit down, eat, and pay full price. Not a gesture. A choice she made repeatedly. Chef Jazzy Bindra had been actively planning a collaboration dinner with Thy when the news reached him. They had been building something together. Dates discussed. A concept forming. A future that existed in their inboxes and then stopped existing entirely. The Houston restaurant world gathered the way tight communities do when they lose someone at the center of everything. People drove to Kingston Street. They stood outside the home and left flowers and handwritten notes at the door. Some had never eaten at either restaurant. Some had never met Thy personally. But grief does not require an introduction. A neighbor who came by that evening said she understood something about traumatic loss and wanted the family to feel, in whatever small way was possible, that they were not alone in it. Here is what this case forces into the open and will not let close. Harris County court records show no history of civil litigation connected to the Mitchells. No legal filing of any kind sat on record anywhere at that address. There was no flag for any institution to catch because no flag had ever been raised. The Texas Council on Family Violence has documented that more than 200 Texans were killed by an intimate partner in a single recent year. Most of them were women. Firearms were the most common weapon. And in the majority of those cases, the people closest to the victim said afterward that they had not seen it coming. That data sits next to this case with an uncomfortable weight, because the absence of a legal record does not mean the absence of whatever was building inside that home. What gets reported to police and what actually happens behind a closed door in a $1.2 million house in River Oaks are not the same thing. They never have been. So here is the question that sits at the center of everything. How do we account for danger that leaves no paper trail? How does a community protect someone who, from every angle it could see, did not appear to need protecting? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. In the days immediately before May 4, 2026, Thy Mitchell was not winding down. She was accelerating. The Houston restaurant community was actively planning around her. Her name was in other people's calendars, other people's proposals, other people's visions for what the next season was going to look like. Conversations were underway about her involvement in programming tied to the upcoming World Cup. Their second restaurant had only recently found its footing and was still building toward what it was always meant to become. The version of Thy Mitchell that Houston was about to get was still arriving. That is the documented, verifiable record of who Thy Mitchell was in the days leading up to her death. Now return to that Instagram post from a week before. He thinks we will grow old together. He will, but I am Asian. When she typed that caption, she was speaking publicly as a woman who fully expected the future ahead of her. She was the one making the joke about who would outlive whom. She was the one whose voice carried that post, warm and entirely her own, shared with a city that loved her. That post was the last time Thy Mitchell spoke on her own terms to the world she had spent years building. Everything that followed was decided by someone else. Hold that, because it matters. HPD has closed its preliminary investigation. The determination is murder-suicide. Matthew Mitchell is identified as responsible. That is the complete extent of what the legal record in this case contains. No note has been publicly confirmed. No motive has been established or disclosed by investigators. No financial records pointing to hidden pressure have been made public. No medical history has been released. Nothing from the final communications between Sunday and Monday evening has been described in any official statement. No prior domestic violence calls existed on record at that address. Not one. Investigators believe the deaths occurred sometime between Sunday evening and Monday, potentially meaning the family had been gone for close to 24 hours before officers arrived at that door. The precise timeline has not been publicly confirmed. What the legal record will never contain is a reason, a why, anything that accounts for the distance between the man who stood beside thee at an awards ceremony and the scene that officers walked into on Kingston Street. For thy sister, who confirmed what happened in a post that asked for nothing except privacy. For the friend who spoke to her on a regular Sunday and got a regular conversation with no farewell inside it. For Craig Howard, who had just made her an offer based on what he had seen in her. There is no proceeding where any of that is addressed. No hearing. No moment where the people thy left behind stand in a room and speak her name while someone is held to account. The investigation is closed. The questions it left behind are not. 1 week before May 4, 2026, Thy Mitchell took her daughter out to shop for dresses ahead of a family wedding. The two of them together. A mother and her little girl in the middle of a regular afternoon, looking at fabric and color and something to wear to a celebration that was coming. Her daughter would have had opinions. She was old enough to know exactly what she liked. Thy would have let her choose. That is what was happening 1 week before. Not a household fracturing. Not a woman in crisis. A mother and her daughter picking out dresses for a wedding they were both expecting to attend. Her daughter never made it to that wedding. Neither did their mother. Neither did her young son, or the little one that was carrying whose name the public never got to learn. Those dresses, wherever they ended up, were bought for a future that was taken before it arrived. By someone inside the same home. Someone I had publicly, warmly, and without any reason to believe otherwise, joked would outlive her. She was right that she would not grow old. She was wrong about why. This is Crime Lantern. Rest in peace, thy. Rest in peace to her little ones. And rest in peace to the one who never got to arrive. This channel will not forget